We need to talk for a minute about fraud, the intentional tort of fraud. You know, fraud can be a crime. It can be an intentional tort that you can sue for tort liability, and it can also be a defense to a contract and can get you out of a contract. So fraud shows up a lot. Human beings will lie. You can end up getting kind of shocked and surprised in court about fraud if you're not careful, because fraud can end up being surprisingly difficult sometimes to prove up and win in court. Because here are the elements that you must prove in order to win a lawsuit for fraud. You must prove that there was a misrepresentation of a material fact, that is, some fact that is important to the transaction. You must prove that the misrepresentation was made with the intent to deceive you or to seduce you into entering into the contract or whatever the agreement was. You must prove that your reliance upon the promise was justifiable reliance. And you must prove that the damages that you suffered are a result of your reliance on that misrepresentation. And finally, there has to be a causal connection between the misrepresentation and the injuries suffered. So where that breaks down in court very often is around the issue of proving intent. How do you prove what was in a person's mind at the time they misrepresented something to you? How do you prove their intent to deceive? They get to court and they're terrified and they say, oh, it's all just a big misunderstanding. I didn't know that that was not a true fact. I didn't know the car wasn't really a V8. I don't know much about cars, and I just inherited the car from my grandma, and Grandma told me it was a V8, and I didn't know it was a 6-cylinder. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that breaks down when you go to court to prove a case of fraud. A side note on that in the law, if you're shopping for something like a car and you go out on the Honda dealership and the car salesman comes up to you and says, you know, this new Honda is the best engineered car in the world. Well, there's probably something else, maybe a Mercedes or, you know, a BMW. There's probably something else, other kind of car in the world that's a better engineered car than the Honda. But we don't say that that car salesman was committing fraud when he puffed up the quality of his product. The law recognizes a certain amount of what they call trade puffery. That is, a salesperson puffing up the quality of his product as acceptable. You know, you have to be responsible for listening to those things with a grain of salt. If he misrepresents a material fact and tells you that the little Honda Putt-Putt has a powerful V8 engine in it, well, that's fraud. But if he just says, you know, these Hondas are the best engineered cars in the world, probably that's trade puffery, and it does not rise to the level of fraud in the eyes of the law. One last note about fraud and about the fact that people will lie when they go to court. I went to West Point and we had the honor code there that a cadet will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate anyone among them that would. And so I came out of there with a pretty stiff and kind of self-righteous view of when and how and why people should always tell the truth. And then I went to some court cases where people went to court and they lied about everything, and I was just outraged. I would lay awake at night just angry. How dare those people that are under oath commit perjury like that and lie? They should go to prison for perjury. But as you get to be an older lawyer, you become substantially more compassionate, even about things like lying. And I want to try to save you some of the self-righteous anger and suffering of youth, by warning you now that many people who go to court and are terrified in the court experience and lie, they don't lie because they're evil. They lie because they are terrified and they are desperate. And desperate people will do desperate things. So when you get to be older as a lawyer and you're planning your trial strategy, you don't plan on getting critical evidence out of an opposing party or an opposing witness. You assume that they're going to lie about everything, and you get your elements of proof in some other way. And when people lie, you just let it go. You look at it with a little bit of compassion and you move on. And that's what I would invite you to do. with people that you care about. If you find out that they have lied to you, it's not always the end of the world, and it shouldn't always be the end of your relationship.